ethanol. Pure, clean, neutral ethanol. You might call it vodka, but this isn't made with a potato. It's made with napa cabbage. That's right, napa cabbage. In this video, I'm going to show you probably the easiest sugar wash that I have come to know. And I broke it down into a very simple ratio. 1 kilo of sugar, 100 grams of napa cabbage, 10 grams of yeast, and 6 liters of water. Now the yeast that I'm using is a sugar-tolerant yeast made by Angel. It's a baking yeast, and I find that it works really well. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is we want to heat up a liter of water to melt our sugar in. So let's get doing that. Alright, well, our sugar is in the container, and our water's heating up on the stove. So what I want to do is I want to take my napa cabbage and I'm going to put it in the blender, and I'm going to pulse it and chop it up a bit. You don't really have to. I have done it with the whole thing in the bucket and chopped up in the bucket, but I like to chop it up because in smaller pieces I feel like it might work better. The reason we're using napa cabbage is because it works as a natural yeast nutrient and provides vitamins and minerals that helps the yeast to process the sugar without crashing or breaking down. Now the water that I'm using our well water rather than the tap water because I don't want to have any chemicals in it, so I'm just using the natural water. Our well water has a pH of mid-6, so that's what I use. My dad does this, and he uses bottled water. So just to, you don't want to use tap water, because when you're distilling whatever's in that tap water, whatever chemicals are in it, you're going to end up getting in your alcohol. And also, because this is a vegetable, you want to clean it very thoroughly, because you also don't want any pesticides in it. So I soak this twice in water and then give it a good washing. And besides, this is like from the central part of the plant anyway, so it's pretty clean. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it in the blender and pulse it up. All right, bear with me guys, because I'm doing this with my phone, so I've only got one hand, but our water is boiling. So without burning myself or spilling this, I'm going to put it in the bucket, and I'm going to go ahead and stir it. The hot water pretty much sterilizes everything I put in here. So I want to get this sugar dissolved, and right after the sugar is dissolved, I'm going to dump in my napa cabbage smoothie, and then I'll add the rest of the water to it. And by that time, it's probably going to be the temperature that's good for pitching the yeast. You don't want to put the yeast in there when it's hot. So I use just a little bit of water, roughly 25% of the ratio of water to melt the sugar. And then by the time I dump the rest of the cold water back in the thing, that usually brings the temperature back to around 90 degrees, room temperature, which is room temperature here. Room temperature here is 90 degrees, which means this thing's going to ferment in about a week at 90 degrees, because it really doesn't get any colder. Sometimes at night it gets down to like 85. Alright, this has dissolved up pretty good. Alright, I'm going to dump my napa cabbage smoothie in it while it's still hot. That way any germs that are on the lettuce or the napa cabbage, that hot water is just going to kill it, so that's going to be good. But and then there we go, got a nice little soup in there, and now I'm going to add the rest of the water, which I need both hands for. Alright, so we're right around 35 degrees, so what I want to do is take a spoon of sugar, put it in a cup, put my yeast in there, 10 grams of yeast per kilo of sugar, And I'm going to add some warm water. It's also about 35 degrees. Stir that up. And then we're going to let this foam up. It should take a minute or so, and it's going to foam up. Alright, so our yeast is foaming up. It has activated. It's important to make sure you keep your eye on this, because if you don't and you forget about it, it's going to overflow like a volcano. Alright, so let's pour our yeast in here, and I'm going to add a little bit more water to the cup, get every little bit in there. Just give it a nice stir. And as you can see, this is relatively quick and easy to do. It, doesn't take long at all. And for the sake of this video, I'm just showing you in this small container the breakdown of the ratio. As you can see, it's a relatively small list. For 1 kilo of sugar is 100 grams of napa cabbage and 10 grams of yeast for every 6 liters of water. So I normally make 18-liter batches with 3 kilos of sugar and 300 grams of napa cabbage and 30 grams of yeast. And I'll do 2 of those, so I'll end up having 36 gallons of wash. And from that, I will get 10 liters of low wines. And then from those 10 liters of low wines, I'll do a further spirit run. And I'll get a total of 6 liters from that, of which I'll pull 2 out for myself and then recycle the other 4 later on. Alright, so that's it, guys. It's really easy. Once again, this is a napa cabbage sugar wash for making neutrals. It makes a really good, clean neutral, and I don't have a air stop on this, so I usually just crack the side a little bit and call it good, and it's been good all along. I'll show you the big buckets later. Once again, here's the ratio. For every kilo of sugar is 100 grams napa cabbage, 10 grams of yeast, 6 liters of water. Here, where it's 30 degrees all the time, it takes me about a week, 5 days to 7 days. It starts off, this will be about 1.055 gravity, and it'll finish off at 0.990. Thanks, guys. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. Bye-bye. Alright, here is the gravity. As you can see, it's kicked off at about 165, and that's because of the temperature there. It's a little bit higher, but this is about what it is every time. This gives me from 1.06 down to 990. It's roughly a 8% wash, and it comes out really nice and clean, and it's good for making infusions or just drinking straight. Okay, so I'll show you how this finishes off in about a week. Alright, here is the gravity. As you can see, it's kicked off at about 165, and that's because of the temperature there. It's a little bit higher, but this is about what it is every time. This gives me from 1.06 down to 990. It's roughly a 8% wash, and it comes out really nice and clean, and it's good for making infusions or just drinking straight. Okay, so I'll show you how this finishes off in about a week. Okay, so here we are a week later, actually about 6 days, and as you can see, the activity has pretty much slowed down or stopped, and we're going to go ahead and pull this out, and I'll show you the gravity reading. Alright, it's a little bit difficult to see here, but because it's right on the line, but it finished off at 0.990, And so so it has finished off and it is ready. Right there at 990. So the Napa cabbage will be floating up on top, and then all I do is use a strainer, and it's very simple. I'll just carefully, without stirring up or agitating it, carefully just scoop out the Napa cabbage, which tastes like sauerkraut, actually. I suppose you could eat it, but I just toss it. Anyways, after I strain all the Napa cabbage out of it off the top, then I'll go ahead and pump it out. Yeah, so I just gotta say, this Napa cabbage sugar wash is real similar to the kale sugar wash. The only difference is I can't get any kale where I live, but there's an abundance of Napa cabbage. And I found that I don't need to use any other additives, no yeast nutrients, no vitamin tablets, nothing, you know, no plant fertilizers, nothing at all. Just the sugar, Napa cabbage, and yeast, and it ferments out perfectly, and it works every single time. It's the world's easiest sugar wash by far for making a neutral spirit. And it has actually a really good taste. Probably because I'm using a pot still and not a reflux or, you know, more advanced still. So because I have to distill it twice from a low wine to a spirit, I get a little bit of the, especially if I'm using cane sugar, I'll get a nice sweetness to the flavor of the neutral. So it's actually a very, very delicious tasting neutral. It's really smooth, good taste. So it goes up this, comes down here, goes out there, and goes in here. Okay, we're at the end of the run here, and as you can see, it's right about at 10%, and we're right here on this 5-liter bottle. So I'll go ahead and add a little bit to just bring it right on up, and then I'll shut it down, and then we'll be done with this run. So this is 5 liters low wines from a 18-liter wash.